Nyong-Ankele division, which gets all for the independence of Cameroon, has paradoxically been betrayed and abandoned by Cameroon, an independent Cameroon. That is the view of elites who think that the Nyong-Ankele division deserves most because it fought with everything it's got for the independence of Cameroon, but do not understand why it's been abandoned development-wise as major infrastructural projects in the area. This, but calls from the elites of the Nyong-Ankele division, have simply been ignored by the central government. Elites are will be speaking in this edition of the news, saying that basic stretches that are supposed to link the Nyong-Ankele to the rest of the central region and the rest of Cameroon have not been worked on by the central government. Also in this edition of the news, ladies and gentlemen, we shall be taking you to Tiko, that's in the Fako of the southwest region. 2 persons have died in a road accident. It involved a vehicle crossing over from Kumba in the Meme to the economic capital city. Also, we shall be taking you to the church. A thief chose to rob a church in the west region of Cameroon, caught by faithfuls. He says he needed money to start up a business, but decided to go into a Catholic church to take money. Stealing from God is a question most people will be asking as we try to unfold details in this edition of the news. Thanks for making the right choice to get information on Equinoxe. We are on to the primetime newscast. We call it the 6 p.m. live from Douala, Cameroon's economic capital city, Equinoxe Central News Desk. You know, elites of the Nyong-Ankele, one of the divisions that make up the central region of Cameroon, do not understand why the Nyong-Ankele division has been abandoned development-wise or infrastructural development-wise by the central government. They say that paradoxically, the Nyong-Ankele division, according to them, gave everything for the independence of Cameroon. Cameroon is an independent country since 1960, but the Nyong-Ankele remains highly underdeveloped. The elite was speaking to our reporter, Anna Bila. One of them is Bombo Bapolipo.
This is the lone road which links several divisions of the central region. They include the Opambam, Nyong-Ankele, and the Sanaga Maritime divisions. The state of the road has been deplorable, leaving Nyong-Ankele in enclavement. Mbombok, Bapot, Lipot, Robert is an elite of the Nyong-Ankele and of the opinion that the road network must be improved upon.
Ce département est très enclavé. Il faut donc désenclaver Nyong-Ankele.
This division is very enclaved and Nyong-Ankele should be disenclaved. I can assure you that beyond my traditional and political caps, we are putting pressure on the government to consider this division, which has given a lot to the independence of this country.
Ces populations qui ont donné le meilleur d'elles-mêmes pour l'indépendance de notre nation.
This river serves as a means of transportation between Bidodibot Makak and Bobok Ern Edo. The contractor who reportedly took over the road construction project is said to be nowhere to be found.
Bila reporting fair, and it should be recalled that one of the bridge linking the Bokma Pobit, Bokma Pobit, one of the subdivisions of the Nyong-Ankele division, got collapsed. We had information as of today that it was pushed to collapse by a heavy-duty vehicle belonging to companies which have been exploiting timber in that part of the Nyong-Ankele division. We shall be coming back to the broken bridge subsequently. Time for us to talk something else. An accident that in Tiko of the Fako, at least 2 persons who've died in a road accident at Camp 6 in Tiko subdivision of the Fako southwest region of Cameroon. The driver and assistant driver reportedly were trapped and crushed under a heavy-duty truck that fell off a broken bridge at Camp 6. Local sources state the truck was transporting cocoa from Kumba, the headquarters of the Meme, that's in the southwest region of Cameroon, to Douala, Cameroon's economic capital city, through Tiko when the accident occurred. The 2 persons who died are the driver and the assistant driver, according to local sources. We stay in the Fako of the southwest region, but this time around talking the elephant of Mount Cameroon. elephants which have gone wild again. Information gathered so far indicates that the hungry elephants of Mount Cameroon have gone wild again in the Fako division, terrorizing and disturbing inhabitants, provoking fears in the hearts of villages of West Coast subdivision, call it Equinoxe subdivision of the Fako in the southwest region. It should be recovered. It is not the first time we're witnessing such an incident. Sometimes earlier this year, the elephants descended and had enormous material destruction in some of the villages. It took the intervention of traditional officials of the villages around Mount Cameroon to get the elephants back again. But conservers say the elephants continue to go down from Mount Cameroon as a result of the shortage of food around the Mount Cameroon area. Locals, however, are calling on authorities to help, especially those of the Mount Cameroon Forest Reserve, to help. They say that they no longer sleep in their houses because of the fear of what might happen if the elephants get dragged into their villages. And now, time for us to talk something else. As we indicated at the start of this newscast, an individual, 28-year-old, decided to start up a business. Thinking where to get money, he decided to steal money from the house of God. Stealing from God is a question many have been asking. Yes, it was in Buda, that's the chief town of the Bamboo Toast of the west region of Cameroon. We have details with Lucy this year.
A 28-year-old faithful inhabited by satanic spirits visited the St. Catholic Church Buddha. This young man got into the house of God not to pray but to steal money. After ensuring that the security guards were distracted, he got into the secretary's office, which leads to the inner part of the church building. The presumed thief claims that he left his house, realized himself in church. Directly he went to the church coffers where he got a sum of 320,000 francs. In an attempt to escape, he was caught by the security guard. Locals immediately turned out to administer mob justice before he was saved by the elements of the Buddha Territorial Gendarmerie. When interrogated, the accused tried to justify his act, saying that he needed money to start up a business. While waiting for judgment, the accused remains in custody.
And just like the situation of Buddha, where the accused was intercepted thanks to the vigilance of the security officials, this time in the Adamawa region of Cameroon, it was almost a similar situation. Individuals trafficking non-biodegradable plastic papers were intercepted thanks to the vigilance of security officials. Beside the non-biodegradable plastic papers were also other illicitly imported products said to have been brought into Cameroon through illicit routes by individuals, and of course the details is compiled by Malak Glory.
Heavy duty truck leaving the north region for destination and the center region of Cameroon falls in the trap net of the custom officials. They were intercepted at the level of Selusamba in the Adamawa region by the Customs Special Mission for the fight against illicit trade. The driver was caught in the possession of 280 bags of plastic papers, which is declared illegal for commercialization by the government.
We had a reliable information that these goods were loaded somewhere in a hidden area in Garoua, and he had as destination Yaoundé. So we had to intercept them at Selusamba.
Apart from the non-biodegradable plastics, several other illicit products were intercepted by the security officials.
Non-biodegradable plastics, about 280 bags. We have 26 motorcycles and then some packages of shisha.
They therefore promised sleepless nights to actors of illicit activities and all men of the underworld.
Malak Glory reporting on the interception of some illicitly imported products. They are said to have been illicitly brought into Cameroon or smuggled into Cameroon from a neighboring country through the North Regional Chieftain of Garwa. Time for us to take you from the northern regions of Cameroon down south to the southwest region of Cameroon, where the call from Cameroon's Prime Minister and Head of Government for the National School of Administration, NASLA, or Local Administration, NASLA, to launch the first competitive entrance examination came under discussion during the board meeting of NASLA in Abuja. To progress with the process, this comes at a time when many still say decentralization is far-fetched on paper and not the issue on the field. Derek Jato, our Southwest Regional Chieftain correspondent, has got details in the following report.
At a time, pundits still hold that the question on decentralization process is yet to be given a practical answer in Cameroon. The National School of Local Administration, NASLA in Boya, among other things, is showcasing the infrastructure grounds covered. This is where the drivers of decentralization will be had. And to effect the process, last June 16, 2022, at the end of the National Decentralization Board meeting, chaired by Prime Minister Joseph John Gute in Yaoundé, who doubles as the president of the National Decentralization Board, called on NASLA to launch the first competitive entrance examination into the institution. And to the municipal and regional executives, the Cameroon PM instructed them to always give the priorities to graduate from NASLA. And back on the campus of NASLA in Boya, the 29th and 30th June 2022 witnessed the first ordinary and the fourth extraordinary session respectively, during which Mota Osman May, the board chair, officiated the sessions.
The session we are having today is the budget session, and we are here to see how far the general manager or the director general has improved in the way and the budget that we voted for him last year.
And this is what was required, according to NASLA Director General Tanitiku Eno.
I think that the session today was dedicated to the examination of different financial documents, our management accounts, our administrative accounts, our performance report.
During the extraordinary session, the board examined and adopted NASLA budget review, balance in revenue and expenditure to the tune of 3,922,380,000 francs CFA. While congratulating the Director General of NASLA, the board also enjoined him to create income-generating avenues for NASLA.
And we're moving closer to the weekend here. One day to go to the last day of the week. Time for us to bring you feature stories. And today we're focusing on the production of charcoal in Buang Bakoko, an area in Cameroon's economic capital city. Inhabitants unfortunately think that the exercise is causing enormous havoc. They say that it is they think that this activity is intoxicating them and also disturbing the natural ecosystem in that part of the city of Douala. Equinoxe is the man on that feature story.
Buang Bakoko is a residential area in the Douala 3 subdivision, but the locality has been transformed to a charcoal production zone. A human activity that has forced inhabitants and business persons to flee from pollution dangers.
24 heures sur 24.
They work and pollute the air, locality 7/24, endangering our health, including those of minors working there.
De ces enfants mineurs ou certains qui travaillent sur ces sites-là.
It is difficult to live here. We are forced to lock ourselves up in the house to avoid intoxication. The consequences are clear and many: respiratory, heart and skin diseases.
Les conséquences sont claires.
Soil nutrients are also killed and crops contaminated. When harvested and consumed could affect the health.
Consommer ça et bonjour les dégâts.
Even actors of this activity are conscious of the environmental and health hazard.
Ça, nous connaissons que c'est toxique.
We are aware this activity is toxic to this residential quarter. True, the people are complaining.
Immeubles se plaignent déjà
I can't blame the population. They have every reason to complain because even us are intoxicated. What we get is a blame game.
Papa, ils ont droit à se prendre, mais
that the population have the right to vomit their anger, but where they are, they control and reduce their toxic smoke. It is that from the Chinese-owned company that intoxicates more the population of Bwang Bakoko. Their smoke pumps out in thick black balls, and it intoxicates the residents with the accusations rather thrown at us. They say with the frustration and unemployment crown on their heads, they are left with no choice than rely on this activity for livelihood. We are certified youths thrown to the streets by the government. We have no choice. There is no site. That they can only quit this site if the government allocates them one, assist them financially, and also evacuate the Chinese also engaged in charcoal production and the environmental pollution. We have only one condition. Government should grant us a site, and if we are to evacuate this site, the Chinese must also leave. We need government's financial assistance to ameliorate this charcoal production format. We beg authorities to help our cooperative. Another reason why this locality is deserted by the inhabitants is the main road rendered impassable by timber trucks. An enlarged road of 20 meters. Efforts of taxpayers wasted by this activity. Because of the now cratered road, the timbers often detach from the trucks, damaging roadside buildings, posing a serious life threat. We demand the state to act. Local authorities should take their responsibilities and abort this scandalous activity. This is the wish of the population of Bwang Bakoko.
Le cri de cœur des populations de Bwang Bakoko.
Since 2018, victims, including locals and enterprises, have filed complaints to the mayor, delegates of the environment and nature protection, and other authorities for them to ensure appropriate action is taken to end this activity in the residential area. It is clear no action has been taken till date since the harmful activity continues.
In sports and on the road to the Women's Africa Cup of Nations in Northern African nation of Morocco, we go profiling teams that are coming for the competition. In today's edition and for the first edition, Simanji Kangebe took special interest on how Burundi, Botswana, Burkina Faso and Tunisia booked their qualification tickets and places for Morocco 2022.
It was a historic day for the female team of Burundi on the 13th of September 2016 as they played their first official game against Kenya. 6 years later, it is a different history as the female team of Burundi qualified for the first time to the Women's Africa Cup of Nations. The Swallows scored 17 goals in 4 matches. The resilience of the Botswana women team was prominent as they fought to appear in their first ever Women's Africa Cup of Nations. The 2020 COSAFA Women's Champions pushed out Angola and Zimbabwe on their way to the final tournament. Togo is certainly a new name when we talk about female football in the continent. The Women's Sparrow Hawks created history by qualifying for the first time for the competition. They defeated Sao Tome and Gabon on their way to the final round of the competition in Morocco. Burkina Faso's historic qualification was secured after overcoming Benin and Guinea-Bissau. The player to watch in the rank of Burkina Faso is Juliette Nana, whose 3 goals against Guinea-Bissau sent the nation in the Women Africa Cup of Nations. Tunisia's women team sealed a spot in the final round of the Women Africa Cup of Nations after a long period of absence. They first played in the tournament in 2008 when Equatorial Guinea hosted. The Tunisian side kicked off their qualifiers campaign against Egypt in the first round before moving to beat two-times winners of the trophy, Equatorial Guinea, on a 7-3 aggregate to be in Morocco. Mariam Ouich of Tunisia is to be followed keenly as she ended with 6 goals during the qualifiers. After 14 years without the Carthage Eagles in the Women's African Cup of Nations, what are they preparing this time around? Only the final whistle of the referee will determine.
That was Simadi Kangebe on the way to Morocco 2022. Here's the Women Africa Cup of Nations, taking us to the end of the first part of news. Coming up is Talking Points. Thanks for joining us on Talking Points. Tonight, we're receiving a political analyst. He is a philosophy teacher and also a social analyst, a social critic. We're receiving him all the way from the Southwest Regional Chieftain, Abuja. He is Mr. Abban Sama Mungwa. Mr. Abban Sama Mungwa, thanks for accepting our invitation on Talking Point. Hello, Mr. Sama. Good evening, and thanks for accepting our invitation.
Thank you, Mr. For me, I'm just a slight correction in the name. It's Sama Bang Mugwa, to be more specific. Thank you for having me on your Talking Point program for today, Thursday, the 30th of June, 2022.
List, we want to talk about a key political issue first that has been making headline news in Cameroon, the SDF. It started from the shadow cabinet shake-up of the national chairman Nijon Frundi. Later, some persons who are appointed to the shadow cabinet of the Social Democratic Front Party turning down and not accepting the positions. It all went from there. And now the SDF is not any kind of political party in Cameroon. It's been very fundamental to the democracy of Cameroon from the inception in the 90s. When you see all what has been happening to the SDF party, do you fear for a democracy falling in Cameroon, or a Cameroonian democracy sick?
Mr. Fomi, permit me say that without being a card-holding militant of the SDF, I have been a fervent sympathizer of that political party for quite a long time. Sympathizer maybe because of its philosophy and its ideology, or maybe because as an Anglophone Cameroonian, I seem to have bought some emotions into the philosophy of the party. And so that said, I am quite worried by the tragedy that is befalling the party of recent. For the political history of Cameroon post-independence will never be complete without a substantial chapter being dedicated to the SDF and its contribution to the limping democracy that we have. Inasmuch as our democratic advancement has not been as seductive as we would have wanted, but I think we have made some progress, and to a very large extent, thanks to the presence and the existence of the SDF. They have had their faults and their ups. They have had their lows and ups, but I think that none can neglect or ignore the contributions of the SDF. And so seeing that political formation go through the hurdles that it is currently going through, it should bother any objective Cameroonian, whether you are a militant of that party or not, whether you are a sympathizer with that party or not. But again, I think that nobody would have actually wanted this to happen, except those on the other political side who would be jubilating. But I think it's a sad period for Cameroon's democracy that what has been the only surviving vestige of democracy and democratic opposition is going through what we are living through. I'm not sure Frundi would have loved that at a time when he is near quitting the stage, this misfortune should meet him. But I think he has gone through a lot. He has gone through a lot, given that he has, over the years, he has lost so many of his most trusted lieutenants, either to death or to dismissals or to abandonment. But what is happening now, when the very last surviving lieutenants, especially when you look at the list of those who constituted the infamous Muda Declaration, if you see somebody's name like Emmanuel Yoyo featuring on that list, you see Awudu Mbaya, you see John Donatus, and then you ask yourself, who are those who are left who can be counted as the true pillars of that party? I think in the interest of the SDF, in the interest of the credibility and the legacy of Frundi himself, and in the interest of Cameroon's democracy, I would urge Frundi and his last surviving lieutenants, particularly OC, to swallow pride and, for the sake of the party as a whole, which is bigger than them as individuals, and engage into reconciliatory talks with those dissidents. Talking about those who about the issue of the shadow cabinet and shadow government nominations and rejections, there is much to it than what social media tells us. I think it is not everything that they have been able to present to the public. There is still much in the back room that we need to know.
Mungwa, in your analysis, you asking the national chairman and his last surviving, you say, lieutenants and close aides to swallow pride. Do you think this is just what is needed, or the only thing that is needed to see the SDF rising again? And it's a double-fold question. Do you believe in a possible rise of the SDF again? The SDF type of the 1990s, the 92s, and all through before the 2000s?
For me, I would, unless I want to be dishonest and hypocritical, those glory days of the SDF from the 90s up to the early 2000s are far gone. And we will really never have that vibrant SDF, that vibrant radical SDF. Because what gave SDF fame was its radical stance and its radical nature. But over the years, maybe because of age, maybe because of reality dawning on them, maybe because they have been overtaken by the forces that they were out to fight against, maybe they have been weakened by their own internal crisis, but the SDF of the 90s and the early 2000s we shouldn't, and our children would never leave that history of the SDF. They only leave that history in history books. We wouldn't really expect that the SDF too from 1990 should have remained stagnant. It has had to re-examine itself, go back within itself and look into itself, and has had to adapt to changes in the political landscape of the country. The SDF came up in the 90s against the mantra of France must go and some anti-France and anti-French sentiment. Over the years, it has dawned on the party that might have been the wrong course, the wrong orientation that they took, and so they have had to change. And we have seen so many of those changes, a more friendly, a more accommodative SDF and a more accommodative Frundi, even having to wine and dine with enemies, I mean political enemies on the other side, having to exchange visits with them, having to invite them to attend SDF congresses, having to send delegates to attend congresses of the CPDM. So it has, we have actually seen a more transformed SDF, a more realistic SDF, and I don't expect that anybody would have expected the party to remain stagnant 32 years after creation. Again, as I said, there is an issue of ego here. And for the SDF to regain itself, go back to not the 1990 era, but to the winning and inspiring political formation that can give hope to a certain population of Cameroonians, concessions have to be made. Both sides have to, because
Mr. Sama,
bear with me, Mr. Fomi, that what is happening in the SDF is a succession crisis. It is a post-Frundi preparatory pedestal that is being established after Frundi. Who next? After Frundi, who takes over? Some of the other lieutenants already see that Frundi has already appointed his only begotten son, O.C. Joshua, and it already creates acrimony and animosity in the others. And so those are some of the things that the party has to go back into the house and sit in the house rather than doing dirty laundry in the public space, which is not helpful to the party. Again, as I said, and I stand to be corrected, there is an aspect of ego and pride on both sides, which has to be solved so that concessions are made for the party to stand, especially given other new and stronger political forces have invaded the political market space. I'm talking here about CRM, and I'm talking here about the PCNR of the young politician Cabral Libi, which have taken the traditional position of the SDF as the first opposition party at the National Assembly. SDF is not second, is not third, is not even fourth any longer. And so if the party hopes to regain lost glories, then those concessions actually have to be made where people have to actually step down from their high horses.
Mr. Sama, you think that the SDF change from the traditional position, which you qualify as some demonstrating some anti-French attitude, is a positive move? Was a positive move when you went further to describe Frundi turning to dine with political enemies? But others will argue that shift from the original position of the party might have just been one of the main reasons that the SDF is witnessing what it is witnessing today. But now, since you will always have much time to analyze, I want to ask this same question again. When you want to place the Anglophone crisis, the armed conflict in the Anglophone northwest and southwest regions of Cameroon, traditionally fears of the political party, that is the SDF. When you want to place the Anglophone crisis, the infighting within the political party, the SDF, then the coming into force of opposition political parties, the Cameroon Renaissance Movement Party, the CRM, the PCRN, and other opposition political parties. When you want to place these forces, these aspects on a line, which one do you accuse as being the major issue that would have caused the SDF to face what it is facing today? The Anglophone crisis, the coming of opposition political parties, infighting, and even the activities of the CPTM-led government.
That's everything. It would have been an error on your part if you had limited to just two. But you have summarized everything into four causes. SDF's internal crisis. The party itself has not been able to solve and accommodate its own internal contradictions. It has not been able to surmount those contradictions and take away positive lessons from them. The crises within the party have not been properly handled by those who think that over 30 years they haven't gained anything, and opportunities would have been created for them to benefit either as members of government or that whatever some elites of the party are benefiting directly or indirectly from the government should have been allowed to trickle down to some of those other founding members and early day members who sacrificed so much for the interest of the party. So, as you said, the internal contradictions themselves have actually been so cancerous that the party has not been able to find a cure for them. The emergence of the CRM, most importantly, has weakened the strongholds of the SDF in areas that are not in the Northwest and the Southwest. I want to tell you that if the MRC had gone in for the last legislative and municipal elections, the SDF would not have won the 2 parliamentary seats that it now enjoys in Douala. The SDF would not have won the council in Bafoussam. The SDF would not have won the council in Lum, which are not in the Northwest and the Southwest. If the MRC, which came up with a stronger mantra and with a stronger regional following, would have lost those 2 parliamentary seats and those 2 municipal councils. Politics is a game of, I don't want to say interest, it's a game of intrigues. And as long as you can devise and develop intrigues to overplay and override your opponent. The Francophones say, en politique, tous les coups sont permis. And if the SDF can allow its doors, both the front door and the back door open, for it to be infiltrated by its opponents, then it is a weakness on its part. The CPM is not doing anything extraordinary by infiltrating and weakening it. It is in its own interest to weaken all its other opponents and rivals so that it stands out. That is all about politics. And if the SDF has not been conscious of that and has allowed itself to be infiltrated, then it has only itself to blame. And again, most importantly, the Anglophone crisis. But unfortunately, the Anglophone crisis has not done good to the SDF, but has rather done good to the CPM. And that is why Frundi, I have heard him and some of his supporters say repeatedly that the Anglophone problem in the Northwest and the Southwest was an anti-SDF revolution and not a pro-Anglophone revolution. Because at the time when SDF militants and SDF councillors and SDF candidates were being pursued and kidnapped in the Northwest and the Southwest, the CPDM was almost nearly allowed to run its political show. And that is why a council like mine, Batibo Council, for example, was taken over by the CPM for the first time. And that is why the parliamentary seat for Batibo for the very first time was still taken over by the CPM, because the Anglophone crisis seemed to have targeted or seemed to have forced SDF militants to chicken out and left an open boulevard for the CPM, while the SDF, out of fear and intimidation, were forced to quit. So I want to also think that the problems of the SDF are fourfold, with the Anglophone crisis being the most recent and the most damaging, which has actually done a knockout blow to the party.
Just before we go, considering the impact of the conflict on the SDF as a political party and its activities on the ground, that is its grassroots activities, considering the impact on the party in the Northwest, the traditional fears of the Northwest and Southwest regions of Cameroon, do you see what many qualify as a political rapprochement between Frundi and the CPDM-led government as a political blunder or a good strategy to survive in a challenging moment?
Let me say that the SDF does not have any parliamentary seat in the Northwest and in the Southwest again, unless I am mistaken. Or they have one in Boyo, I think. But apart from that, if the SDF were to reduce itself to an Anglophone political party, and with the ongoing crisis, I think in the next 2 to 3 years, or in the next municipal and legislative elections, the SDF will be non-existent. If this crisis were to continue, and if the SDF phobia, if the spirit of SDF phobia that is ongoing in the Northwest and the Southwest were to continue in the next legislative election period, it means that would have been the final nail on the coffin of the SDF. And so it is in the interest of the party to to open itself up, so that it can be able to secure support in other parts of the country. One thing I know, which is where critics of the SDF, I mean hardcore Anglophone or Ambazonian critics of the SDF find fault with the party, is the fact that the SDF stopped being a mouthpiece of the Anglophone cry and opened itself to wanting to be a national party, which is what Frundi has professed so much, that the SDF is a national party and cannot and should not be reduced to an Anglophone movement. Unfortunately, the forces on the ground now far outpower the SDF, and I don't know how the party is going to cope with it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sama Abang Mungwa. Thank you. You are a political and social analyst based in Buea in the southwest region of Cameroon. We're glad you had time to talk with us on this edition of the Primetime News on Equinoxe. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your very keen attention. Information and interesting programs continue on Equinoxe. Shortly after this, you're going to be having Equinoxe Soir with Juval Fongwa, and Julien Bert-Pissa will be coming with a complete version of the news in the French language. That will be at 8 p.m. I will be here tomorrow at 6 p.m., God willing.
Equinoxe Télévision, au-delà de l'image, nous rendons compte.